We are going to go ahead and open up the discussion because we wouldn't be here, quite honestly, if Christy Corwin hadn't come up with the idea of this wonderful project. So we have several people who've logged on so far, and there'll be people who will be watching this on the recording as well, which is lovely. Christy, would you be kind enough to tell the world really what inspired this beautiful documentary? And by the way, Russell Garcia's music is playing in the background. We thought it was quite fitting to start off with that. Thank you so much, Christy and Gina, for being here, and all of you for attending.
Oh, and thank you, Meredith. You've just been really, really wonderful to work with, and we're so grateful to you for all of your assistance and the beautiful media kit that hopefully everybody has had a chance to take a look at. That was so magnificently done. I'm really excited to also have my grandmother here today, live from New Zealand, and to share a lot about Russ and their life and their story, which is so extraordinary. The impetus for the documentary film came, well, first of all, Gina, my grandmother, and I we both founded the Build a Better World Foundation in honor of both of their lives, doing all kinds of humanitarian work through music and education. And we founded this nonprofit, and we had been doing concerts prior to COVID, raising funds and donating funds to other existing nonprofit organizations. And I had been watching other documentary films about other music professionals or music people, and I thought, wow, so much of Russ's musical life is literally an untold Hollywood story, because first of all, he was so humble. He was such a wonderful man, and he was so humble, never talking about all the work that he did. And so many people that even knew him well didn't even realize the amount of work that he really did. And the other reason was because a lot of his work, he was a ghostwriter for many, many famous people in TV shows and movies where people didn't even know that it was him that wrote the arrangements and the music for many of these films and projects. So I thought, wow, this story really needs to be told. It is such an extraordinary story of their lives, beginning, him at the age of 7, and then, his music career. And then after he married Gina, of course, and his Hollywood career got really busy. And then at the height of the career, selling everything and learning navigation and sailing the South Pacific to teach the oneness of humanity. I don't think there's any story like that I've ever heard of out there. And I thought, wow, this is truly a very uplifting, inspirational, extraordinary story that really needs to be told. And so that was what inspired me. And, I'll just mention quickly, we were starting to work on a concert that we're going to be planning at the Hollywood Bowl, honoring Russ and many, many different music professionals who were inspired by him or learned from him or his books, and with youth, and then being able to raise funds to donate to many, many different charities that are doing good work in the world. And so when COVID hit, we had to sort of stop the Hollywood Bowl. And it was like, well, I think we need to now do this documentary. And so it's become, the inspiration and in the flow for now. So we're very, very excited.
Well, I'm thrilled to be able to witness this. And I think it's really exciting and a lovely opportunity for Gina, if you wouldn't mind, to share who Russell Garcia is. There might be some new eyes on this broadcast. And as Christy previewed, which I think is unbelievable, his career actually began at age 7. Please share a little bit about your beloved with all of the people watching.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say he is the most kind human being, really, I've ever known. And that's saying something. When I first met him, he astounded me with the wonderful, wonderful sense of humor that he had. And you know, one of the high things in my choice of people is I love people with a sense of humor. Anyway.
I'm with you, Gina. Life is meant to laugh, right? There's so much heaviness, especially now, and it's just such an important thing. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Well, I tell you, without laughter, there's not really much to life because you have to learn how to laugh at things. Nothing is always going to be the greatest. Sometimes it's not what you expect, but you find if you can laugh at the things that you did or you didn't do, it makes it so much easier to get through life. And we found that we really felt we belonged together very, very soon, I should say. And the only interesting thing about our whole first relationship was when he asked how old I was, I knew if I told him I was 17, because he was 33, he would run like a scared bunny rabbit. So I said, well, I'm going to be 20 on December 4th, but my mama taught me never to lie. And I thought, December 4th, I'll be 20. And I never said what year.
And you were funny too, Gina.
You think so? I was just trying to be honest, honestly. That's all it was.
Oh, I love that.
And the funny thing is, when he showed up on my 18th birthday, I had to confess, I'm only going to be 18. He showed up with 20 long-stemmed, beautiful roses. And this is what scared my parents, a beautiful wristwatch, because with the Italians, if you give jewelry, it means you're getting serious about the girl.
So he was
worried. They were worried because of the big gap that we had in our life. And I could understand that, you know, because it is a big gap of 16 years. But, you know, I was always very, I'm going to say mature, not with conceit, but just with humility, because the way I was raised with my family, we got lots of love as kids, but they taught us very young, particularly how to cook, you know, how to take care of your siblings. All of these things were all part of our life. And so one of the wonderful things we had is music was very big in my family. We all sang, you know, we all listened to opera. And maybe that's true Italian style, I don't know. But overall, I can say is my dear darling won them over, because not only did he have this wonderful sense of humor, but he understood their anxiety about my being so young. But the truth is, they would not give me consent to marry yet. And one of the things I thought, and even back then when I was a little, you know, resentful about that, I said, I want to keep this unity in our family. That was the thing. I didn't want to, what's the right word, you know, elope and run away. I didn't want that. So what happened was we waited. We waited very patiently. I still lived at home, you know, and we all got along very well. And little by little, it all worked out to the fact that when he did, my folks did accept it. It was wonderful, is all I can say. I thank the good Lord every day that I met this gorgeous creature. He was so kind. He was so good.
Kind and funny, and obviously very patient.
and very, very talented. Now, I have to tell you, I never knew that he wrote the symphony. Christy told me about this. I didn't even.
The one when he was 7, you mean?
Yeah, that symphony.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a moment. Maybe Christy, you can chime in as well, because that is an obvious musical prodigy. Anybody who creates music at the age of 7, that blew me away, is what we're referring to. And if people are watching right now, that gets to be told. So share a little bit about that for those, for those who are just getting to know Russell and might not know this fun fact.
Well, I believe it's in his book, his biography. I have hundreds of stories, some of them true. And, that's his biography. And, but I was going through a lot of the music that we had sent, actually the music from New Zealand here. And I was going through it and I found the actual written music, this sheet music that he actually wrote at the age of 7. And there was a note on it and said, Russell's music at the age of 7, and that the Oakland Symphony performed it. So
that's amazing. And I'd like for people who are tuning in to really get the gravity, to understand a little bit about how unbelievably gifted, in addition to being funny and kind, Russell was as a music prodigy. To kind of get a snapshot of this, all of Hollywood at one point or another was utilizing him for the creation of music behind some of the biggest movies. He worked with fabulous celebrities. Share a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind, ladies, because it's quite extraordinary.
Well, he had a great reputation in Hollywood. He wasn't much of a drinker, and he never got into drugs. So what was very exciting to other guys who would get stoned or drunk, when they couldn't meet their deadline to record in the morning, they would call Russ.
Oh, they could count.
They knew they could depend on him to do the music that they needed for the recording session.
Unbelievable.
Because otherwise you're out of the business if you don't meet your deadline. That's for sure.
So important. Even today, that hasn't changed. But let's not diminish. He also worked for many of the studios directly. And let's talk about some of the movies. I know personally, he's worked on several and with many celebrities. And I think many people watching would have no idea that he's worked with the greats like Charlie Chaplin and so many more.
Oh, yes. Well, the thing is, in Hollywood, how shall I say, there's like a hierarchy of people who work at the studios. And because Russell was so very dependable, he became a regular with all the studios, not just one. Universal was always first call. They thought he was, I think, the answer to everything, because sometimes people or directors would get a film and they can't find the right person, to do it, to write the music for it. They would actually bring Russ in and say, this person hasn't had a lot of experience writing, music for film. And what we'd like to do is ask you to take him through what it is that you do when you write a film. And he did a lot of that. And these were people who were talented, but didn't know, what you had to do. Because with the film, they used to do a close-up, medium shot, distant shot. All of these things were all filmed. And then the music editor would come in, and the film editor, and they would come and choose. And the reason they do that is we get very tired of just looking at one person speaking, doing one thing, right? You need motion, you need action, and
music.
Well, that's it. And if you ever saw a film without music, you would know it, because we're so used to hearing it. Most of the time, a film without music would never even be noticed. The
I,
interesting, the
oh,
interesting, well, the interesting thing about his most famous film, The Time Machine, I still get royalties on it. And he wrote it back in 1960, the
oh my,
film score.
the
And
gift
that's amazing.
of music.
That is amazing, yeah. All around the world. And I must say, when my darling, when my darling passed away, I have a big box here full of letters from people who were his fans that we never met.
Wow.
Yeah. And one I never forgot because the guy said, I saw your film when I was 10 years old. He said, and The Time Machine is still my very favorite. And I'm a man of 50.
Wow. It's amazing how he uplifted people throughout his career. And one of the fun facts that I thought would be kind of neat to share is the celebrities that he worked with. Could you share with the audience? I mean, it's a pretty unbelievable list.
Well, he wrote a lot with singers, first of all, that were in did a lot of, what will I say,
Like
Vegas.
Judy Garland and some other big.
Oh yes. He not only worked for Judy Garland, he worked with people like Ella Fitzgerald. He worked with people who loved Louis Armstrong.
My
He
daddy
said,
loved him too, but he didn't get to work with him. That's unbelievable.
that's true. But the interesting thing is when Russell did Porgy and Bess, a big LP for, it's now a CD, I should say. He worked with Ella and Louis doing all the tunes in the album. Louis didn't know a lot of the um, songs, all by heart. So he had to learn them. And Russell had to record them on a little cassette and send them to Louis while he was playing in Vegas, because Louis was then going to come to Hollywood to record.
Oh my
And
goodness.
the funny thing was, Louis was so excited about Russell because Russell told him, he said, Louis, I wrote my first arrangement as a kid by listening to your Me and My Shadow
Wow.
recording. Yeah. Russell did a lot with his ears. He had very good, what I would call, musical ears. And he could listen to a recording and tell you what each instrument was playing.
Wow.
Because not all the instruments are playing exactly the same thing in an arrangement. And Louis got such a kick out of the fact that Russell said, I learned how to do arranging from your your record, he said, as a young kid. Yeah, Louis had a great sense of humor, wonderful, wonderful, beautiful man. And also Ella Fitzgerald, with that wonderful instrument that she had, she was very shy.
No, I never
Yeah.
would have.
Nobody knew that. She was very, very shy. And you only got to know that when you met her and realized how shy she was. And what an instrument she had. Well, she was my idol always, because I loved, singing, and I loved music.
Gina, no, wait a minute. You're a singer, yes?
He's a singer. Yes, yes.
I
Just steamroll through that. You were a powerful musical couple. And I think because of that reason, it would be wonderful if you could share with those people who are tuning in from all over the world. What do you think that Russell's greatest impact was on the music community? Because obviously he's worked with icons and created movies, but he's done so much work through his career, and his legacy is really living on. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, and Christy as well, please. What impact do you feel he has had on the community in music?
Well, frankly, he wrote 2 textbooks on composing, arranging, and conducting, and they have been translated into about 6 languages, and they are used as texts in universities.
To
And
this day, right?
every time we would travel, he would always be requested to do master classes with the people who were studying. The interesting thing, they loved him in China, Japan, all these countries, because when we'd go there, they'd say to Russell, you know, everything I know about music, I learned from your books. They used to call him the master, you know, or sensei, I know in
Yes,
Japan.
they still do. They still call him that. Now the people I run into here, they're still saying that. I learned everything from him. He's the master. They're still saying it.
Absolutely, yeah. He had the wonderful, if I could say, the wonderful ability to be able to distill a lot of complex um, things, you know, like about music, to make people not be, what's the word, discouraged. One of the things I think he will do with these books, with his music, with his kindness, is that he will inspire people to, how can I say it, like to follow what you would like to do in life. A lot of people have dreams, but they remain dreams. They don't try to do the things they'd really love to do. Yeah, so it was very interesting to see with all the different people he worked with. He worked with Zsa Zsa Gabor, for example.
Oh my goodness. How fun.
Oh yes. And when Russ was writing her arrangements, it was very sweet. She said, in her inimitable accent, she said, you know, Russ, I know I don't sing too well, but she said, when I will do my show in Vegas, I have a beautiful gown cut down to here, and she's almost pointing to her belly button. She says, I don't think they will mind. She had a very good sense of humor too, by the way.
Well, that seems like an ongoing theme. And also, I think there are a couple things that Christy mentioned that I would like to revisit, if I may, because we don't want to gloss over the enormity. At the height of Russell Garcia's career, he had an iconic home built in the Hollywood Hills, if I understand correctly. And to this day, they call it the Rainbow House. You can explain a little bit more about that. They have it on the Hollywood tour. It's so amazing. And he sold that. And you two, from what I understand, walked away from Hollywood, quite frankly, at that time. Please continue that story and share a little bit about that, because that's remarkable.
Well, I think maybe one of his dreams was that he would love to sail a boat around the world, first of all. And his roots are actually from fishermen in the Azores Islands. That's where the Garcia actually comes from. And they tell an interesting little story, the family does, about when one of the brothers, by the way, I should tell you, Russell is one of 5 sons, and he's the only one that was musical. And they couldn't think of anybody, even in their ancestors, who was musical. So I always said, these were wonderful gifts from God to him, that he was able to do that.
And now to the world. But back to that moment, building this dream home for you two. I'm sure it was a dream home. Obviously, it's quite iconic. You can look it up online if you haven't heard of it, and if you tune into the documentary, which I really implore and hope all of you watching will. It was magnificent, but even more fascinating that you were not material people, obviously, because you sold it and set sailing. So please share a little bit about that.
Well, our goal, of course, was to just go for about maybe 3 years. Literally, that was our goal, and return to Hollywood. But you know, it's very interesting. When Russell and I became members of the Baha'i faith, we had a whole different approach toward the world than we had before. We were very, I have to say, we were focused, I'll put it that way, on having a good life, having a nice home. And I have to tell you, building the home was really very exciting for us, because we had this wonderful architect, John Lautner, whose work,
famous, if you don't know that name. Very, very cool.
And who we admired his work. And we thought one day we would love to have a home, you know, with him, that he would be main architect for. And it was so wonderful because when we went to see him, he asked us, now, what do you really want? What do you really need? And we used to have a wonderful Baha'i meeting at our home once a week where people could come and find out about Baha'i if they were interested. And so we said to him, well, Russell is always busy writing music. So he has to be where the people, he can't hear if I have 100 people in this beautiful room, which I actually had 200 people in the house. No, nobody was really sitting down. Everybody had to stand up. But I said, Russell has to be where he can't hear what's going on because he's got to write music. But I do have to tell you, he could be writing music while something is playing in a restaurant that's completely removed from what he's writing on a serviette. He had this, can I tell you, he also thought when he was younger that he said he thought everybody heard music in their heads, you know.
Oh, wow. Well, he was clearly a prodigy from a very
yeah, people would ask him, said, well, how do you write music? You know, what makes you, how do you do it? He said, well, all I need is a paper and a pen or a pencil, and I can write music. I sit quietly, and before I know it, it flows through me and I write it down.
Well, hopefully in the documentary, everybody will get to see more of the house and the extraordinary architecture and the work and the heart and soul that you all put into it, as it is now quite famous still to this day.
Oh, yes.
I don't want to diminish, and before we run out of time, what prompted you to sell it all, and then what happened after you did? Because you left that house and bought a boat. Tell us more about it.
Well, I didn't eat, when Russell came home and said, what do you think about selling everything and buying a boat and going around the world? And because we were Baha'is, we knew it was a world faith. And he said, and we can visit Baha'is in all these far out places where airplanes can't go, only boats can go. And I liked that idea very, very much. But I said, but on a boat, don't you know, I can't swim. And he said, one of the wonderful things he said to me all our life, whatever it was, whether we were climbing Mount Whitney with our son, whether we were going to ski down glaciers, honey, you can learn. That was what it was. And you know, I am so grateful because of that, because I did things I never would have done in my life.
Oh my goodness.
He was absolutely amazing. And I have to tell you, everywhere we went, we found Baha'is, and it was delightful because the idea of learning about other people, seeing how they lived. And you know, I have to tell you, people with the least were the most generous.
That's so
absolutely mind-blowing how generous these people were and how wise, how they would figure out things about their surroundings, how they lived. Wonderful. So we were very active Baha'is in Hollywood.
I'm going to pause you because there are actually people who don't know what a Baha'i is. Christy, would you mind sharing a little bit about that? Because we haven't heard from her in a moment. I would love for you to share the beauty of what the Baha'i faith is, because that was a central part of the Garcias' life for sure. We can't not share
it. Yes. Well, some of the principles of the Baha'i faith are the oneness of mankind, the abolishment of prejudice, the equality of men and women, the fact that we're all one, we're all united, there's no clergy, that religion is a progressive revelation, meaning one always tells of the coming of the next one, and the next one is always a continuation of the previous one, and that different manifestations and prophets of God are sent to us by God every 1,000 years or so to continue on the same spiritual message, but with different laws and ordinances and ways in which to live for this day, that day and age. Anything else you want to share, Oma, about that?
Well, I think everywhere we went, we found people very open to the idea of the oneness of mankind. And Baha'i teaches us that that's how we will have peace in the world, because we will see each other as members of one family, the human race. So it was really thrilling to travel all around the world and to find these wonderful concepts being practiced in these out of the way places.
Well, speaking of out of the way places, I don't know too many people in New Zealand. How did the Garcias land in New Zealand, which is now
Oh,
your...
that's a very interesting story. We were on our sailboat in Fiji at the time, and we were anchored out in what was called, believe it or not, we live in the Bay of Islands in New Zealand, and where we were in Fiji, we were anchored in this lovely little bay called the Bay of Islands, in front of a very beautiful new modern hotel that had opened up. They loved having the sailboats in that bay in front of the hotel because it added, they said, a little bit more romantic glamour to the place. Well, anyway, while we were there, a big Russian liner came into the main port of Suva, and we were just a little bit outside in the Bay of Islands from Suva, and they had an orchestra. You know how on all these big tour boats, they have an orchestra and someone singing, sometimes someone even dancing. And we even did that once on a trip to Hawaii. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, all these musicians now are wandering around the island, and they stopped in this beautiful hotel to have a drink. And while they're there, they're talking to the bartender. They said they were musicians from New Zealand in this band playing on the Russian boat. And the bartender, who knew who we were, said, "Oh, we have a famous Hollywood composer here with his wife on their sailboat." And the musicians thought, yeah, some guy on their sailboat, saying he's a, Hollywood musician, film writer and stuff. Anyway, when they asked the bartender, well, what's his name? And when the bartender said, Russell Garcia, the guys were dumbstruck. They all had his books. They all had his CDs. They knew as much about Russell and music that as I did. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. They said to the bartender, how can we get to see him? And the bartender says, I'll take you in the dinghy. He says, you're supposed to request permission, before you go on a boat. And he said, because you're musicians, I'm sure Russell won't mind. So out they come in a dinghy to the boat. And of course, we invited them aboard, and we fixed them coffee and had goodies to eat. And we were talking about all kinds of things. And out of the blue, one of the musicians of the orchestra said, Russ, how would it be, since you're on your boat, you're not that far away from New Zealand. What about you come to New Zealand and we could get you concerts all over the country, master classes at all the universities. And he said, you can go visit schools, you can inspire young people to get into music. And that same musician, by the way, became head of TVNZ in New Zealand later on. Wow. But Russell looked at me and I looked at him, and we both shrugged and we said, why not? And that's how we wound up in New Zealand, to be honest. Good. They flew us there and we went all over New Zealand, but it was all south of Northland, really, because all the musicians were in the, well, yeah, I have to say, they were mostly in the cities, and we were never north of Auckland, which is the main big city, of course. Yeah. In the North
I've actually been to Auckland, and I must tell you, I understand why you stayed. It was, the whole country was literally the most beautiful place on earth that I have seen.
Absolutely, absolutely. But anyway, when it was time for us to go to go back to our boat. We loved it. We loved all the people. We loved the scenery. It was really wonderful. I can honestly say the friendliness of the people everywhere we went was unbelievable in New Zealand. Now it's time for us to go. And a Baha'i friend actually said to us, gee, come over on your last night before you leave the next day. Well, the next day, before you leave to the next day for Fiji. And she said, and tell me all about your trip that you're going to take up north. A friend who was had a sailboat, he was a yachty himself, that we had met, said, you know, Russ and Gina, I know you've got to go tomorrow night back to your boat, but you can't come to New Zealand and not visit the Bay of Islands. He says, borrow my car. That's how much he wanted us to see the Bay of Islands. And we did. We borrowed his car and we drove up. And our first glimpse of New Zealand, you have to come up, it's like a hill, really, the road. And in those days, all the planted trees and things were not blocking too much of the view. And we came up and it was warm up here. We were down there in August, it was cold. And before us, this view opened up of these beautiful little islands on the sparkling sea. And my darling said, sweetheart, let's go get a real estate guy and let's go look at some land. Wow. And that's what we did. And when we got there, we found only one street long, Kiri, one little, what do you call, estate agent that sells property. And we walked in and we said, we'd like to look around, but we're interested on places on the water because we have a sailboat. Well, the guy took us all around and he showed us beautiful places, but they were all, how shall I say, like one property after another along the water. And we said, that's really not what we're looking for. And we were up on a hill where the estate agent had taken us. And Russell looked across the bay, not too far away, and he said, that's what we would like. He said, see that little house right on the beach? There's a jetty. And he said, and see the boat on a mooring? Russell, that's what we want. That's what we're looking for. The guy said, forget it. It will never be for sale because, he said, it belongs to a businessman by the name of Bob Harnish. He'd never sell it. It's his summer home. Well, we went back to Auckland, unfortunately, with nothing that we really felt we could, buy and come to live with. The last evening when our friend had said, please reserve the last evening for us, come and have some, something to eat. No, she didn't say something to eat. They had the word, and I think it's English, natter. She said, come for some tea and natter. Anyway, we didn't know what natter was, and we kept waiting.
But you went anyway, I bet.
We kept waiting for something to eat, with our tea. But we didn't understand that it just meant to talk. And of course, what did we talk about? Only the Bay of Islands. And she said, when we said, and sadly, even with the estate agent that we looked at property and stuff, we really didn't find anything that, would be right for us. And she said, gee, my brother Bob has a beautiful property up there.
Oh
and,
my gosh.
And her name was Carden, Beryl Carden. She said, and he's going to have to sell because he just bought a property in Rarotonga and is going to
I'm going to stop you because we're almost out of time because I think I know the end. No, it's okay. Anyway, that was the house, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the house.
I know it. That's amazing. Before we leave, I don't want to, you can certainly share a few more stories. I want to give you guys both an opportunity, however, for those who've tuned in from all over the world and for those who will watch the replay, what is it that you hope, as Russ was certainly, and by the adventures, thank you, Gina, that you've been sharing, so special. The life that you had was so unique. What do you hope that people will feel? And Christy, please feel free to chime in as well after watching this documentary, because there are obviously some unbelievable stories and adventures that you've had. But if you really hope that they'd walk away with something, how do you hope that they'll be feeling after you create?
I hope, if nothing else, they will be inspired to follow their own dreams. That's the thing I think that most people uh, dream about and think, oh, I can never attain that. And I think um, we had to learn how to, I had to learn how to swim. We had to learn how to navigate. We had to learn how to sail to do the trip, first of all. We really feel that all the adventures that we had might inspire other people to think that they could make their life exciting, interesting, and get to see a lot of the world and get to really know what it means about the oneness of mankind.
Oh,
That's what I really hope.
and not only is that inspiring, just listening to you share the beginning of your relationship, the extraordinary journeys you've been on together. There are two themes of love: the love you had for each other and mankind, and obviously this extraordinary love and passion for music that you both shared. And that in itself is extraordinary as well. Christy, before we round out the hour, would you like to share your hopes for people tuning in, and the takeaways and maybe some fun facts? Gina did share a few things that have blown me away, but if we've left anything out, I'd love for you to take a moment to share too.
Oh, well, it is my hope as well. She and I have the same, as well as our family, my mom and my children and my siblings, is that, they really did live an extraordinary life. And miracles just kept showing up, just like how that house became available. And because their life was devoted to being of such service and through music, the wonderful things, adventures, and my grandfather was a true innovator of doing things differently, doing things unique, things that have never been done before. And also, I think for young musicians or even older musicians in general, somebody like him can be a real inspiration to follow your dreams and never give up. Never give up. Keep going until you achieve what it is you want to achieve. And if this story could help to be an inspiration for others, I think that that's the most wonderful gift that this documentary film could bring. So, and then our nonprofit Build a Better World Foundation is all about inspiration and honoring existing musicians, inspiring young musicians, the empowerment of youth and young people in music and the arts, and to raise funds to help all kinds of charities that are doing such wonderful work around the world. And this will be a true continuing, I believe, of the legacy of both Gina and Russ Garcia and their life, and how we can keep it going to facilitate good in the world. And that's the real, meaning for me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you both so much. And at this point, we're going to round out our time together, but we would be delighted if you want to click the raise your hand and click on the Q&A. You can ask questions. Christy and Gina will be here for a few more moments. I have to say, what a treat to be a part of, just a little tiny part of helping you share this message with the world. We've already had producers come forward and Hollywood directors show interest in the project. And if you are watching, or you are here with us right now, or even in the recording, I think it would be great, Christy, if you could type in the chat your email. We would love for you to reach out to us. Not only does Russell Garcia's story get to be told, but people in his life get to be a part of this. And we know that some people would like to perhaps be a part of it behind the scenes or partners. And we want to make sure that everybody who is interested can get in touch. And there you go, Christy at buildabetterworldfoundation.org is a great place to reach out to us. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in from all over the world. And most importantly, Gina, thank you so much. I know this is early for you in New Zealand, and you are sharp and very, very clear. And I am just delighted. Many people don't know this. I've been working a lot and gotten to know Christy, and I know of Gina. So what a treat to be with you both for this time together. And if you have a question for the future and you'd like to have a longer conversation, you can arrange that via email as well. And any parting words for those who came out today and those who will catch it in the recording, Christy and Gina, thank you so much as we round out. Anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Just thank you to everybody that was here today and supporting this event and wanting to know more. And we're really excited to follow up with many of you who are interested in more information. And thank you so much, Meredith and the team, Tia and Ashley, for putting this all together and doing such a beautiful job of organizing everything. And we're really so grateful to you. And we're looking forward to moving forward.
Yes, getting this project out to the world. And if you haven't already received it, there is a beautiful addition to fill in some of the gaps that we might not have covered today. It's called a press kit, and it's a sneak peek for what's to come ahead for this wonderful untold Hollywood story. Let's just leave it at that. And pretty soon the world will know the ins and outs and so many lovely things that they might not have known yet about the life of Gina and Russell Garcia. And thank you so much again for taking the time. And thank you to everybody who joined us wherever you are in the world. Be inspired, be encouraged. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon with big announcements for the upcoming project and documentary. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.